What does it mean to live a resilient life? I'm Ryan Manion. I lost my brother to war and my mom to cancer, and I've learned a lot about myself along the way. Now, as the CEO of Travis Manion Foundation, I'm on a journey to explore what it means to be resilient against life's many challenges. Join me and some incredible guests as we ask ourselves the hard questions and define what it means to struggle well. Welcome to another episode of the Resilient Life podcast. I have awesome guests today. Air Force veteran Haley McClain Hill. Welcome to the Resilient Life.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you came on our radar, actually. We had put out a, TMF had put out a social post to recommend some great guests to the podcast, and 1,000 people kept tagging you and tagging your company, and I was like, we got to see who this woman is. And then I saw, I think you had posted, I'm also signed up to become a CDM mentor for the Travis Manion Foundation, and I was like, get this girl on the podcast. So I love it. And so I was doing some research and looking up kind of your background, and well, let's start off. So you're a Penn State grad, which, you know, is I'm in prime Penn State territory. It's like you either go to college or you go to Penn State, and it's about a 50-50 split from where I live. So half the kids go to other colleges and half the kids go to Penn State. So I always say it's a little bit of a cult up there. I have, you know, a bunch of family that went to Penn State, but I love the, you know, just the excitement around people that go to Penn State. They love it. You know, nobody walks away from Penn State not being a diehard Penn State fan. So,
I don't know what they do to us. I really don't. Maybe it's because we're there in the middle of nowhere for 4 or 5 years, but it's a family, which I love. It's similar to the military where it's like, yeah, if you're from Penn State, we got your back.
Yeah. And I always say it's such a great, you know, you look at colleges that have great alumni and networking, and that's like a big factor when you think about it. Like what are the benefits you get when you leave the school? And, you know, a lot of those are kind of reserved to, like, the Ivies always have great, you know, network and connections outside, but Penn State is another one that it's just like, oh, you meet another Penn State alum, they're like, all right, I'm going to help you out. Come on. You know, I'll show you the way. So you went to Penn State, I'll help you. But
Exactly.
so you were part of the ROTC unit there, correct?
Yes, I was. Yep.
And I love that. They have a really super active, they've actually done some stuff. The ROTC unit at Penn State has done some stuff with the Travis Manion Foundation. They hosted a 9/11 Heroes Run for us one year, and we're always finding different ways that we can work with them. But it's a great ROTC unit up there.
It is. It's massive too. It's like have you been to the campus and seen the unit?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Yeah, Wagner Building. It's really cool that how like everyone's all together too. So they really established this whole network of like working together with all the units, which is not normal because a lot of schools don't have all three. So that's pretty cool too.
Now, what made you decide, because I'm having these conversations with my I have a daughter who's a freshman in high school, and we're starting to like explore, you know, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? And she came downstairs just a few weeks ago and she said, Mom, what's ROTC? And I was like, oh, sit down, honey, let me tell you. And so just for reference, my oldest daughter is a senior and she's headed to the Naval Academy next year. So
wow, that's
excited.
huge.
Yes. And
That's
but
awesome.
my daughter, my younger daughter, like, she knows the academy pretty well. My brother went there. We were there a lot, and she has zero interest in that. But she, I think, started to identify some of the perks. And I say that, you know, casually, but there are definitely perks and benefits. And you know, when Maggie's talking about different things, she's like, And so she started to look into ROTC, and she came down, and I was telling her, I'm like, listen, this is a great opportunity for you to have a regular, right, college experience, but also get those same benefits that Maggie's getting attending a service academy. And I said, and
Yes.
guess what? Like, you all end up in the same place once you graduate, right? Like
Exactly.
my dad would always say it does, my dad didn't go to a service academy, but he ended up at TBS with all the Marines that went to the Naval Academy. That's how it works. And
Yes.
so when I was like explaining to the different things to her, her ears were perking up a little bit. So that's now one of the things she's considering. So I'd love to know, like, what brought you to that decision for ROTC?
Well, Ryan, she has to consider her lifestyle and what she's used to now. I think when I was about to go into the whole college experience and everything, my grandmother, who served 20 years in the Air Force, she was the one who was like, okay, you should just look into this military thing. You can get your school paid for. College debt is not it. Nobody needs that. Nobody has time for that. It just puts you in a hole right after school. You don't want that. So she's like, look into this. So we did look at the Air Force Academy first. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, do I want to be wearing a uniform 24/7? Do I want somebody telling me what to do? Like for 4 years straight. And then they even have the prep schools, right? If you don't get in, then you have to do a prep school for a
Oh
year. So
yeah.
you could potentially do 5 years. So I'm just like, I just don't know if that sounds like me. I'm like, I kind of want to. I was an athlete too. So if your daughters are playing any sports, like there's just this whole other aspect with ROTC where you can really live this full college student experience and just have the discipline and the North Star that a lot of students don't have who are just regular college students. And that actually allows you to do better in school because you're not just focused on, oh, let's just party and let's do whatever, blah, blah. It's like you actually feel very focused and you're like, I have a end goal and I'm commissioned to the military. And the military is going to get in me if I don't keep my grades up or if I don't, participate and be present and not just party my life away. So when I actually got rejected from the Air Force Academy. And I was like, okay, they're like, you can come to the prep school. I'm like, no, I don't want to do 5 years. And then I applied to ROTC, got a full ride scholarship to any in-state school for free. And so I'm from Pennsylvania. I grew up in PA. And I was like, oh, I can't do the cold anymore. I want to go to Florida. I want to get away from this. But the military was like, you got to go to any in-state school. So I said, okay, let me go visit Penn State. I never was like a Penn State fan. Not that I didn't like the school, I just didn't pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And when I went to go visit, I had a friend that was on the cheer team, and she took me around campus, introduced me to people, and I kind of fell in love with the school. And I was like, I think this is my fit. So I would just recommend to the girls, like, go to the places, see it, catch the vibe, meet people who are there and see if you mesh with them, and then you'll kind of understand where you kind of get that feeling in your stomach. So
Yeah, and that was the thing, we went on, and so we went online and I showed her every different school that had I started I'm from a Marine Corps family, so I started talking to her about the NROTC, and so I pulled up all the NROTC schools and she was like, "Oh wow. Oh, yeah, I like this school and I like that." And I was like, "Yeah."
yes.
So, and that's a great way to look, that's the things we talked to her about. Like, listen,
Mhm.
we don't have some massive college fund. Like this,
Right.
some of it, this is going to be on you,
Mhm.
and,
Be strategic, you know?
yeah. And, do you want to have debt when you enter into your, when you graduate college? Like, and,
Yeah.
another thing she's always says, my daughter loves to travel, and she says, I just want to travel. And I'm like, go in the military for 4 years. You'll get that
Yes.
travel bug out of you real quick, So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And go in as an officer. I think my grandma was the one who told me she was a, got out senior master sergeant. So she's like, go the officer route, especially for women. I think it's such an awesome opportunity to lean into your leadership skills, and you only have to do 4 years, and then you can get out and really take like the civilian world by storm or start your own business, kind of like what we've done. It's like there's so many things that you can pull from ROTC and the officer side of things that I'm like, I'm really thankful that I did it.
yeah. Well, I love that. So you did Penn State, you did your 4 years in the Air Force, and
Yeah.
you get out, and you, like many other veterans, which I absolutely love, went the entrepreneurial route. And now so let's talk a little bit about Torch WarriorWear, and we'll get into what that is. But did you have the idea for this? Like, was this something while you were in the Air Force that you were planning? Like, this is what I'm going to do. Did you know upon leaving, like, this is what I'm doing?
No, Ryan, I had no idea. And I think I've noticed my life has been a series of like, oh, like something pops in that gives me an idea. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of explore that. So that's another thing for, young girls. Like you don't have to have it all figured out. Like even if you do ROTC, like I had no idea I wanted to be an entrepreneur when I was, 29 or whatever. So when I was about to get out of the military, it was COVID. It was 2021. My contract got up in 2022, and I was just going back in and out of the office, and nobody knew what was going to happen with the military. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to stay in. I don't know if I want to get out. I actually started dating my boyfriend too. So there's a lot of things that happen, especially with women who serve. It's like, which path do I want to go? My boyfriend, he's from Santa Cruz, and he's like, I think, we can make it work. I said, okay. So we had that decision. And then a couple of weeks later, it was like, I started to notice again just how uncomfortable I was when I was wearing my uniform going back into the base because it was doing a week on, week off thing. And so one week I got to be at home in my cozy clothes, and then one week I had to go back in my uniform. I was like, look, dude, I was like, how can I make something more comfortable for when I go back into the office? And so then the bodysuit idea kind of came from my pain of feeling like I don't want to put this uniform back on. I just want to be like in my. I feel so much more productive when I'm comfortable and confident. So
Well, and
that's
also during COVID, at leisure like blew up,
it
right?
was the whole
So
thing.
it
Yes.
became like a social norm for you to just be in for women like stretch pants and a sweatshirt. I mean,
Yes.
my dress code became so much more casual. Just and it still
Yes.
continues. Like when I started this podcast during COVID. And
Awesome.
had I started it pre-COVID, I probably would have been in a blazer every episode.
Yep.
Like that's what I would have thought that I needed to be wearing. But I'm like, I'm sitting in my basement. Like I'm walking down and I'm throwing a sweater on and a pair of slippers and I want to have
Yeah.
conversations. And so you get
Yes.
that idea where you all of a sudden start to recognize like, oh, I'm just not like comfortable, right?
Exactly. And the reality of the situation is it's like keep a neutral tone, color. You're looking clean, concise. It's just like that's all women really need. It's just like let's just look modern. And I think that's the whole thing with like skims blowing up and everything. It's just like you can throw it on with everything. And it's just a thing where you can just, okay, I'm just gonna switch a top here and there. It's just the functionality and the easiness of it. It's like we have other things to be worried about other than trying to match a whole fit. It's like just throw it on and go.
So you're just you start having these conversations in your head about, the uncomfortableness of the Air Force uniform. But like, how does that go from there to I'm going to create something that actually works?
Well, Ryan, I'm sure you had the whole same process with starting your podcast. You're like, I see what everybody else is doing. You're like, I'm sure I could figure this out. Like, I think with, your dad being in the Marines and my grandma would be in the Air Force, like you have these people who are always like, you're gonna figure it out and there's nothing you can't do. So my first thing was just asking questions. I went to a couple small boutiques in San Francisco and I was like, how do you guys make this whole thing? And I just started asking questions, and it was, they knew I was coming from a good place, so they connected me with their manufacturers, their fabric company. They're like, this is how it works, this is the lingo, this is how thick the fabric needs to be for certain fabrics, whatever. So I just started literally becoming a student again, and I was like, okay, if this, I need this for my uniform, and I'm just talking all clunky to them, like I just need this to look like this, and they're just like, yep, we got it, we'll figure it out. And I was like, okay, sounds good. So I met some really awesome people, and that's the first step of starting anything. So
So you make a prototype for a bodysuit essentially that you can wear
yes.
that's regulation for your uniform.
Yes.
And do
Mhm.
you bring it home, try it on and say, this is it? Like I'm doing this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was in my uniform for about 6 more months. And so the last 6 months I would just wear it to work. And I was like, oh yeah, yeah, this is it right here. I'm like, I love this. I showed it to some girls that I was working with. I put it on TikTok and I was like, would anybody like be interested in this? I'm like, I've been wearing it. It's like the best thing in the world. And then it just started to grow from there. So I was like, all right, we're gonna go for
I
it.
love that. And so, okay, how do you go from we're going to go for it to we're actually doing this?
The money. It was investing in my first big round of inventory. I think we bought around 2,000 units. And once I got it, I put it all in my second bedroom of my house. Me and my boyfriend started, packaging everything. We had Shopify. Again, so easy now to like do a product-based business because you have all these e-commerce stores. So made our e-commerce store, put it out there on, again, social media, and then we started receiving orders, and it was just packaging them up, shipping them out, and then it was just building the community. As you've done with TMF, it's just reaching back out, asking for feedback, seeing if we can connect with people. I would travel to conferences. I would say, hey, just being really in people's face and showing them what I'm trying to do. And it was so different, right? Like I'm sure you've been to a million conferences, and it's like, you'll see the typical technical companies, you see the typical, organizations that are talking about home loans and all this stuff, whatever. Sometimes it's not very creative.
Yeah.
And so I was like, at my stands or at my tables, I would have, mirrors that said like, you are fearless, and like, just like tapping into like the feminine energy of the women. And they're like, what's this? And I'm like, this is the future. I'm like, we are going to have a brand that speaks to women and makes us feel like we're wearing like a Skims or something that really speaks to women specifically. So yeah.
I love this so much, the concept of what you're doing, but also like how you say, like, I'm going to speak to women because, you
Mm,
know, we have a lot of female veterans on staff and
yep.
on staff at the Travis Manion Foundation. And, we have conversations about the challenges of being a female in the military and some of the
Yes.
stigmas and things that you have to overcome. And I'll tell you, that was one of the things, with my oldest when so she's a lacrosse player and she got
Cool.
recruited to play at Navy. She also had opportunities at other colleges. And
Sure.
for her, she is from a military family. So
Mm,
but she never saw herself. She saw her grandfather, who was a Marine Corps colonel. She saw her
yep.
uncle, who was a combat Marine. She
Mm,
never saw herself in her family members. And it
yes.
was actually Jackie Barnum, who's
Yes.
a Marine. She's still active duty, a Naval Academy grad. And when Maggie
Yes.
was really starting to think about seriously the Naval Academy and what that meant, she still couldn't like picture herself. And I could feel that because I
Right.
have so many people in my life that are Naval Academy graduates. They're all my brother's friends. And so I'd be
Right.
like, talk to Uncle Carlo about, and she's like,
It's
okay.
just different.
Yeah. And she talked to like my brother's friends that were all Navy wrestlers or, like Marines
Yeah.
and and she'd have great conversations, but I don't think she walked away saying like, okay, I get what this is going to look like for me. And so
Right.
I found Jackie on Instagram and I started following her. She was doing some work. She was actually bringing our Character Does Matter program up to NAPS, to the Navy
Oh,
Prep School,
amazing.
where she was an
Yes.
instructor. And I
Incredible.
had seen TMF post some stuff about her and I'm like, wait, who is this girl? And so I
Yep.
started following her and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, this is it. And so
Yep.
I DM'd her and I was like, Jackie, I need you to talk to my daughter. And she was so
Exactly.
gracious with her time and she had a Zoom call with her and Maggie started
Yes.
following her. And then she kind of tapped in because Jackie's part of like the community with the Haleys and the Rileys. And she all of a
Yes.
sudden found like, okay, yeah, these are my people. Like I can see who I want
Yep.
to be now. And I'm just so
Yes.
grateful for all of you young female veterans that are out there and putting out that like you can be in the military and you can still be a girl's girl and you can still be super feminine and you can still hold on to that
Yes.
identity. It doesn't go away, you know?
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy she met Jackie. She is like the perfect person to meet. And she's launched her own nonprofit too, Mentors for Military. And
Yep.
I think it's so cool to see that because I felt that way too. I mean, I think a lot of girls feel that when you're going in, you're like, is this really for me? And even with social media showcasing like the duality of being in the military and also like the strategic plan of this is an opportunity for you to meet people who are really high achieving. And so if you can tie yourself into that and see the women who are doing that, and you can almost plan your life around that too and say, hey, like help me figure out where I want to go and show me the best path forward. Because I think also having my grandmother, right, who was like when you're in, when somebody talks to you this way because of this, this is how you navigate that. It's just really nice to have a woman to say, okay, this is how you navigate. Because we all know we love guys, we love the men, they're amazing, we love you guys so much. But sometimes, as the advice, you're like, that's just not going to work for me.
Yeah, different. It's different.
It's so different.
And
It's
it's
so
one of
different.
the most powerful things I think about social media today, that like she was able to kind of collectively find this community of female veterans that she could follow, right? And kind of
Yes.
emulate. And, being a high school student in suburban Pennsylvania, I mean, her friends are like, wait, you're going into the military? Like they don't get it, right?
No.
And so
Mhm.
she didn't have anybody that she could kind of turn to. So
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's the cool thing. Makes the world a little smaller and you meet again very like-minded people and you're like, "Oh, like she dreams big, she goes for it." And that just inspires you to live a bigger life too. So, I agree. Jackie inspires me still today also. So,
Yeah.
we love her.
It's good stuff. So, I saw that, with your Torch Warrior wear, one of the first things you did is you actually came back to Philadelphia and did a veteran Shark Tank here,
Yes.
and you won.
Yes. We
So
won. Yes.
that was a big moment for you, I'm sure.
Huge moment. I think, again, I've never thought about starting a business. I never knew there was an avenue of pitching and trying to get funding. And as you know, with like the whole nonprofit side, raising money is a complete skill. And I did not have that at all. And I was like, okay. So again, lots of research, tapped back into YouTube, my community of Penn Staters. And I'm like, how the heck am I going to win this thing? And so the whole premise around the pitch was how we were building community for women in the military and how we were going to solve a problem of making women feel more confident instead of having them fit into a men's world. We were going to create a world for them themselves. So I think, again, the authenticity and the heart behind the brand really spoke to the audience. And there's just something special about trying to do something for an amazing group of people. So yeah, we won the 50K. It was life changing for the brand, and I was able to continue growing, and that set us up for the real Shark Tank. So that was awesome.
Yes. So let's walk through the real Shark Tank, because that's an intimidating place. I mean, you watch that, and I watch these people come out with their ideas and they just get ripped apart. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's brutal, which is a great representation of what the real world is. So I'm not taking anything away, like as it should be. But
Right. Right.
so tell me about that whole process.
Oh my goodness. So it took about a year to go from application to me standing in front of the sharks.
Uh-huh.
So with TV, it's going to be multiple rounds of you pitching yourself to the producers and then helping you formulate your pitch to see if you're ready for TV and if you would even be a fit for the season. So when I knew I wanted to apply, the only thing you have to do is go online. And some people get lucky. I wasn't lucky, but sometimes the show will reach out to you and your business. But I just went the normal channel and I applied online. A couple months later, I heard back from them and they're like, okay, this is interesting. What we need you to do is formulate this pitch. We need all of your financials. We need everything together. And I'm still newer in business. So I'm learning how to, my bookkeeper is still learning my business and my marketing strategy is just like, I mean, I'm just going out there and telling people about the business. There's no real plan around everything. So I had to almost make my business more mature really quickly. So that was, I think, the most challenging part, right? Was just like, how do I make myself look as professional as I possibly can before I step into the Shark Tank? So when I was formulating my pitch, again, I wanted to bring in military women. I wanted it to be this whole like thing where people, you see the pitches where it's just like awesome. And so I ended up they gave me my film date and it was sooner than expected. So I tried to get the approval from the military to have real active duty military women with me, and it wasn't approved. So I ended up having to go by myself. As a lot of people saw, I was just there by myself, which was a whole nother mind thing because I thought I'd have like four people with me. It'd be like us against the world, but it ended up just being me. So
Because in the Philly
what
Shark Tank, you had your grandmother, I
models?
saw, and you had other people up on stage with you. So yeah.
I did. Yeah, and it was awesome. I had my friend who was at the Coast Guard Academy actually, and she was their head cheerleading coach, so she came with me. And so yeah, it was a really nice environment for that one. But for this one, they're like, nope, it just can be you. And I was like, okay. So once I knew my film date, they were like, all right, you've got 2 weeks. I went on YouTube again and found a Shark Tank specific coach. I found somebody
Wow.
who trains people, yes, on high risk presentations, and specifically have trained like 2 or 3 people to be on Shark Tank. So we worked every day for the last those 2 weeks on my presentation, my delivery, questions, Q&As. I mean, I was just drilling myself almost like, basic training pretty much. They made me show up every day at like 6 in the morning in my uniform. They're like, okay, do your pitch like 100 times a day. So it was just like this almost athlete mentality of like, okay, I have to train nonstop because I
Right.
will get in there and completely just like forget anything.
So did
So
you go in knowing like this is what I'm willing to take, right? Because they throw
yes,
out all these different offers. And so did you go
yes.
in knowing like this is my rock bottom, like I will not go below this, like you knew what your terms you were going to agree to before you walked.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I knew I was going to asking for 150K and I wasn't going any higher than 30%.
Okay.
And when she offered me the 25%, I was like, okay, perfect. I was like, and that was another thing my Shark Tank coach told me. I mean, we practice every scenario. It was like, okay, if everybody goes out, how do you handle this? If everybody's in, how do you handle this? It was just like all scenario
How do
based
you not
training.
seem too eager? So then somebody else drops out because they're like, this is too easy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like totally a mind game. Like you have to know how to
it
play.
is. It is. And thankfully, I think they're very kind to veterans most of the time. Like they're not going to completely shit on you.
Yeah.
It's like, so I was like, okay, I have this kind of buffering system, which is nice, but they were all very respectful and they were asking genuine questions. And I think, as you know, like the military space is very, you don't know it unless you've been in it. So I think I had an advantage because I've been in it. I knew it. I knew exactly what we wanted and what we were trying to build. So I wasn't really ever tripped up by their questions. It was more of, how can I make my story compelling so that I could be on TV? Because that's really what you want as well. So, all really worked out.
And so how many people did you just get one offer?
One offer, everyone went out. And that was terrifying because when I walked in there, I had my sights set on Emma Green, who is the co founder of Skims. She was my guest shark.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I was like, oh, this would be perfect fit. Like I was like a Skims Torch collab. I'm like, or
Yes.
she buys us and like we make a whole military edition. Like, I don't know. I'm like, this could be so great. I walked in there, everyone started going out. I was like, okay, that's fine. And then she was the last one, and then she went out, and I was like, okay, I'm screwed. I'm like, I'm leaving without a deal. And finally, Lori, I forgot she was even sitting there because I was so focused on Emma. I forgot she was sitting there. And then Lori was like, well, I'm still in and I would love to support the military and what you're doing. I love who you are. And I would love to do a deal with you. And I was like, dude, like, she's awesome. She's a perfect partner. So I'm really happy.
So, okay, I want to know a little bit of the background because of course you watch the episodes, but I mean, these are legitimate business deals that happen. So,
Yes, they
you
are.
leave the show and they are fully investing, like Lori invested in your business. And she is
Yes.
now a 25% partner of Torch WarriorWear.
So, yes. And the cool thing is that when after the show, you have to go through another whole level of due diligence. So we actually just started, and again, she has a million other businesses. So
Right.
it's just this whole process of like, again, like my lawyers working with her lawyers, everything, blah, blah. So we're still working through that whole like defining the actual contract. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the times people don't even get the deal. I think it's like 80% of the times the deals fall through. So we're
Right.
really grateful to be actually still working with her.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And so do you
Yep.
have, once that deal goes through, it's signed, sealed, delivered, are you ready to like for what comes next?
Oh yeah, Ryan, I've been preparing for this for months. Like I said, it's been almost 2 years since I first started this whole Shark Tank journey, but I think all great CEOs have the vision and we're always thinking about the future and our future goals. So now I just have this entire like dream sheet, almost like with the military. I'm like, okay, once I start really working with Lori consistently, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to bring it to life. So, and she's expecting me to really run this train. So, one big thing I really want to do, and hey, maybe TMF and us can do a collaboration, but the Army Navy game is such a big time for us to really see our target audience. So I'm looking to do a big brand activation there, some type of party with other, veteran-owned businesses or something. So that's something we're going to focus on this year. That's what I
Um,
want to tell Laura. We want to do something huge there.
well, let's talk offline because we throw the largest tailgate at Army Navy every year. So
Yeah,
we
I know.
could probably have some good space for your activation. And I love yeah, I
Yes,
love
a
the
female focused one. Your daughters can come. It'll be a more female
yes,
focused.
yes.
Yeah,
I know. I
yeah,
think about like next year Army Navy, like my daughter is going to be a midshipman. And it was funny
yeah.
last year, somebody said her boyfriend goes to West Point. He's a plebe at West Point, and
I love that.
were there and they were at our tailgate, and their whole plan was to go and watch him at the march on. And then they got to our tailgate and they're like, the mom's like, well, we're gonna go watch him at the march on and then we'll come back out. And I go, no, you can't come back out. If you go in, you're in. And she said, well, wait, we have to stay in our seats until the game starts. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the sacrifice you make. And she
Right.
and her other sons are sitting there like, well, let's just stay here, mom. Like, and she goes, well, what are you going to do next year? And my daughter was standing next to me, and my daughter goes, she's definitely not coming in for the walk on. And I'm okay with that. And I'm like, I'll see you in the game, babe. But like, they march on at
Yeah,
like 11:30 and the game starts at 3.
yeah, exactly. No, I know. It's just the same. I know. It's such an awesome experience too to see that. I did get to see that. I went in early and I checked it all out, but that was my first Army Navy game last year. I'm like, yeah, I'm coming back every year. This is awesome.
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
a great, I love that you're looking towards those types of things for like activation for how you, and again,
Yes.
that target audience of you've got the cadets and the midshipmen, and these are young women that are getting ready to like enter the fleet and, just be these female leaders, and see
Yes.
someone like you. I love it. I love all of
Oh,
it. And
Ryan, we're gonna do something fun. I have a lot of ideas. It's gonna be epic.
yes,
Okay. It's
you
gonna
know,
be good for
one of
them.
the things I love is that the way you talk about your business, and it's very similar to how we talk about TMF. We have very
Mm,
specific programs that are aimed to train veterans, invest in veterans to help them develop both personally and professionally, and then go out and activate and be out in communities and help strengthen communities. But like at the end of the day, we don't have that 30-second elevator pitch because we do so much. There's so many
yes.
different things that we do at TMF. And I always say, like, at the end of the day, TMF is a community. Like, we
Yes.
are a community of like-minded individuals that want to go out there and find purpose and do good, and
Yes.
you talking about, your bodysuits, right? Like your
Yes.
bodysuits, and they're awesome. And I wear them all the time as a civilian because, like you say,
Yay.
they're easy. You put them on with your jeans, you switch out the colors. It's
Boom.
perfect. But it's a very simple product that means so much more to your customer and your consumer.
Yes.
That
Yes.
they are seeing, oh, wow, there is investment in our comfort and accessibility as female service members. And it's so much
Yes.
more than the actual product itself. So I love the way you talk about that. And I think that is
Yes.
really, really strong and smart to do.
Well, that's why I wanted to meet you, Ryan. That's why I was like, I need to get on this podcast. I was like, I need to meet Ryan because I see what you're doing. And I actually met so Jamie Quadrosi. Do you know
Of
her on your team?
course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jamie, yes. So she was working with the Miami Dolphins
Yeah.
cheerleaders
We stole her from
before.
the
So
Dolphins. Yes.
yes, exactly. And so I met her when I was about to go into my NFL cheer career. And so she was telling me about TMF and I was like, this is amazing. And this is what I've done my entire life, especially as a cheerleader. Like you're always out in the community, you're always talking. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And again, once you become a veteran, having that purpose to get back and to give back, I'm always finding ways to be able to be of service to others because I think that's just who I am now at my core. So when I saw what you're doing TMF, I'm like, yeah, no, this is bigger than just, helping veterans do something that just fills their time. It's not about that. It's about reinvigorating who they are as people and to show them that they can be of value to their community, not just with the military, but to anywhere they go. And I think that's something that what we are doing with Torch, it's like the psychology behind what you wear and how you represent yourself. There's so much that goes into fashion and it's not just, oh, I look good. It's more about how do you feel from the inside out. And that's what I think you guys are doing with TMF too. It's like it's more about the inside out instead of, oh, we're just an outside organization. So I love what you guys are doing. It's amazing. And I'm really excited and happy for you what you've built. It's very special.
Thank you. Well, I'm
You're
excited
welcome.
to hear that you have. Tell me where you are in the process as a CDM mentor. So, for those that don't know, our flagship program at the Travis Manion Foundation is called Character Does Matter, where we train veterans to go out and deliver character education to our nation's youth. And
Yes.
I saw that where are you in the process?
So I'm still going through the virtual training.
Okay.
When started in January, and then Shark Tank hit in February. So I was like, oh my goodness.
You got
But I'm getting
it.
right back into it. I know. But I'm like, okay, I need to talk to Ryan. Maybe I can get expedited, because I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready. Just put me out there.
Listen, just having you in front of, I talk about what, female veterans like you mean to like younger female veterans or those considering the military, but
Yes.
just to females in general. Like our female CDM mentors across the country are some of the most powerful mentors that we have because,
Mm,
again, it's this idea of you will be in front of young girls and they may have no
yes.
interest in joining the military, and that's okay. We are not an
Right.
indoctrination program, but we hope that
No.
some of them will consider that path when they see someone in front of them that has gone through it. But just
Yes.
the idea that they can see a young female leader is so
Yes.
important. And it's one of the first things, when this program began, and I shared this story with my staff last week. We had a full staff training. Everybody was in town, and I
Yes.
was bringing some of them up to speed because we had people that have worked with us for 15 years, and there were
Yes.
people that had just started 3 weeks ago that were at this staff training. And I was sharing with them the
Yes.
story of like when CDM began, it was me. I was out there and I was speaking at schools across the country, or across the state of Pennsylvania, not across the country, but I was in Pennsylvania speaking at schools, and
Yes.
I would share stories. And obviously I shared Travis's story, and then I would share stories about other service members that he served with that had some really great stories. And I would always
Yes.
tell this story in the beginning about George Washington. And
Mm,
he's the person I used to talk about leadership. And so I would share like, the greatest act of leadership was when George Washington retired back to Mount Vernon. And
mhm.
and my dad, I tell the story of how my dad, when I first wrote my first speech for CDM, because it was a speech, I had it all memorized. And
Oh
my
my
dad was
gosh.
like, I love that George Washington part. Like that's really powerful, to really explain to kids you don't need a title or position to be a leader.
Yes.
Well, after I spoke at my brother's high school, the principal came back a few days later and was like sharing some feedback. And he was like, listen, obviously these kids love hearing about Travis. Like he walked the halls of this school, and hearing
Yeah.
about those men and women he served with is really powerful. And I'm like, great. I'm like, is there anything they didn't like? And he's like, there was some feedback. They didn't love the George Washington part. And I was like, what? And it was this really epiphany for me because I recognized in that moment that our next generation is looking for relatable models, right? They are looking for people that they can see. When they said they
Yeah.
can see themselves in Travis's shoes, he walked these halls, and it was like, listen, they're going to
Mhm.
learn about George Washington, and learning about George Washington is super important. I'm not taking it, but they're going to learn about that in the textbooks in schools. Like what they need
Right.
are relevant and relatable models right now. And that's what
Yes.
Character Does Matter veteran mentors do. They bring
Yes.
that to life in front of these students. And I'm just
Oh yeah.
thrilled that you're going to be part of that community. And I promise
Me
you, the
too.
first time you step in and you speak, you're going to love it. And you're going to say, I want
Oh
more.
yeah.
It's just,
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to do my first one. I'm so ready. I've been preparing for it. And I did recruiting in the Air Force for a year in Atlanta, Georgia, and that was the number one thing. That's the reason why they put me in Atlanta. They said you're a young black female Air Force officer and you are relatable to them. And
yeah.
they're like there's no I saw girls, they're like, you're an officer, like you're in the Air Force, like I've never met anybody who looks like you ever in my life. And I think there's a social media too, right? It's like everyone seems so far away, and like all the people who are doing amazing things seem so unattainable. When you actually show them, bring somebody in front of you, it's like, no, you can do this too, and I can. And we're just we're right here with it. It's the best feeling. That's why I'm like, I'm ready to get back into it. So
I love it.
I'm already ready. I already have my speech.
Well, maybe we're gonna need to get some Torch WarriorWear like branded TMF for our
Yeah.
female CDM mentors, because we give out
Yes.
polos to the men and to our male veterans, and I think we have women's polos too. But I would much rather be standing up there in like an embroidered
Yes.
bodysuit, you know, in a pair of nice
And
slacks. Yeah,
I love that. And I can make a collared bodysuit too. And then it'll look very similar, just a little bit more, form fitting.
yeah,
I can do
love it,
that.
love it.
I love
Okay,
that.
so Haley, I always end every episode asking my guests the same question, and that is, what does living a resilient life look like for you?
Mm. I think living a resilient life for me means living authentically, even if that means losing people that have been in my life for a long time. Um, I think that the older I get, the more I realize how important it is to be true to myself. And sometimes it's very hard to be honest and to be upfront and direct with people about what you need at this time in your life. And sometimes that comes with people who don't want to be around you or who don't understand what you're trying to build for your future. And you have to let that go, which is very hard. And so it's that feeling of continuing to move forward, even when you have to let some things go.
Yeah, I love that. It's, obviously resilience is always about moving forward, but I love the idea of sometimes you have to let some things go in order to do that. I love it.
Yeah, but gives you room to meet amazing people like you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Haley,
awesome.
this was awesome. I think there's a lot of opportunity to come for things that we can do together. I thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me here today.
Ryan, thank you so much. You're a rock star. I'm so happy I got to meet you. Thank you.